Taking it a step further is the latest ENVG-B. This has brought night vision and situational awareness practically to the same level seen in sci-fi movies and video games.
Alright y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. Okay, so happy Earth Day. You guys can already see I'm celebrating by turning my lights off, unplugging some stuff. So hopefully you guys can do something as well on your end. You know, maybe unplug some stuff that you never use or turn the lights off every now and again. But yeah, it's one day a year, so I figured, you know, we might as well make it a special occasion. So I got some new night vision, and at the same time, it was kind of like just like the perfect timing. Someone recommended a really cool video in the Discord. Now this is about night vision, but it's more specifically about how the US is sort of losing the advantage at night. And of course, in today's environment, when you're talking about peer-to-peer warfare, people have some pretty high-tech stuff nowadays, and even a lot of bigger militaries have a lot of their soldiers equipped with night vision. So I want to see what this video has to say. It's only 9 minutes long, but it'd be cool to see how they sort of sum up the US losing that advantage at night. Because again, I think we still have some pretty nice stuff. You know, we have some thermals mixed with night vision. We have some pretty solid night vision optics, and you know, it'd be cool to see. Again, I'm totally unbiased when it comes to stuff like this. I understand, especially in today's environment, people are getting new tech pretty quick, and it's kind of hard to keep up. So, you know, if you're not on top of your game, it can happen pretty quick where you lose that edge. But it seems very cool. Now, this specific video is from a YouTube channel called Covert Cabal, pretty appropriately named for this video specifically. So they seem like they have some pretty cool stuff. Of course, I will put the original video in the video description for you guys to check out, but let us get into it. Okay, pretty cool intro.
The US has always been the undisputed masters of the night. From Rogers, Rangers, daring night raids, to stealth aircraft, to cutting-edge night vision
snap.
systems. The US has
Bringing
always
it
been
back.
dominant in low-light fighting, catching their enemies completely unaware and off guard. Their enemies feared to face them, especially after the sun had gone down. But that is changing. That sun is now setting on America's supremacy in the dark. Whether it be from insurgent forces to state actors, the US is struggling to keep pace with the sudden influx of cheap, effective Russian, Chinese, and now even Iranian night vision into the modern battlefield. Even their own technology is being turned against them by the so-called lukewarm allies that they provided it to. Former US Secretary of the Navy John Lehman's famous statement to Congress back in 1991 that, quote, "we own the night," is no longer true. The night has always provided the greatest cover in warfare. Visibility is reduced, with many people sleeping and less alert. Ninjas took advantage of this. They were known to infiltrate their enemies completely undetected under the cover of darkness. But it wasn't until World War II.
So there's definitely some fair points there. Now, I have to say, I'm not sure the correlation you could really make with today's combat and how it was when there were ninjas. But of course, throughout history, the cover of night has been used for warfare to do certain attacks. But I would say back in the day, if you knew about it, you know, you could maybe put up more lights. But in today's combat, even if you know an attack is coming at night, if you don't have the capability like the enemy might have if they do have night vision, if you don't have that night vision capability, then it's not going to matter if you know it's coming or not, because you won't be able to prepare as well. Or even if you do prepare, it's not going to matter. So some pretty fair points. I will say when we do a lot of training, we like to do stuff either after the sun sets or maybe like right before the sun goes up. Of course, that's not always the case. You can really plan around it, but it's always nice to have that advantage of using night vision.
Undetected under the cover of darkness. But it wasn't until World War II that the night really began to be exploited through technology. These initial devices were large, bulky, and heavy, which really limited their use of scopes for snipers and mounted devices for observation on vehicles and other dedicated units. As the technology improved, they became smaller and more capable. Gen 1 devices were able to amplify light around 1,000 times, which may sound like a lot, but actually isn't much better than your own eyes after they adjust. Gen 2 increased that to tens of thousands of times, and shrank the technology. The American PVS-5 was the first widely used night vision goggles that you often see.
Dang, dude.
However, at first, these were made for pilots and truck drivers so they could operate better at night. Then, they were slowly adopted for use by ground units and special forces.
Truck drivers,
Gen 3 further improved on the technology with better and more consistent manufacturing methods, which made them more affordable, which enabled more widespread use. And finally today, what is referred to as Gen 3 Plus or Gen 4 and beyond. And these night vision devices are sensitive instruments.
He's using it in this snow environment? That's kind of interesting.
For example, most devices require a nitrogen purge every 60 to 90 days, often more when used in harsher environments. Without routine maintenance, loss of nitrogen pressure in the optic allows condensation and...
So yeah, that's true. You are supposed to get certain maintenance like that. But I would say in the US military, it doesn't work out like that, like it should. And of course, with newer technology now, it's not totally necessary to get maintenance on time. I mean, stuff is so competitive nowadays with technology advancing so much. Like you get some pretty nice night vision for, maybe about $3,000. Of course, that's not necessarily going to compare as well when you have newer night vision that has thermal and night vision capabilities blended together. So for example, we have the PSQ 20s in the Army. You'll see those all over the place. And it has a cool feature where it basically draws a line around a person. I'll put a clip right here, but it'll basically draw the line around a person or certain shapes. So it's pretty cool. Even if like you can't see that well, if you can turn that feature on, it does a pretty good job of spotting things that might be of interest to you. So, night vision now is so advanced that even if you have some cheap night vision, it's not necessarily going to compare with what there is now with the whole fusion of thermal and night vision and advanced features on top of that.
Dust to collect on the sensitive components inside. This will degrade image quality and could possibly cause permanent damage. With the recent gold rush of new civilian customers into the market, unfortunately, many companies focus too much on securing those new sales, while ignoring critical service and support. But this video sponsor focuses on that. The Commando store is proud to announce their new night vision service department systems. The US has always more or less been on top in terms of not only advanced technology, but also widespread implementation,
I love the
training,
old footage,
and integration into combat operations. Night vision and thermal systems provide an amazing advantage, but they're not without their drawbacks. Night vision is monochromatic, and thermal imaging paints a much different picture of the world than we're used to, and more importantly, training in. It can become difficult at times to distinguish between friend and foe, especially in the stressful, high-intensity situations that accompany combat. For example, in 2017, a U.S. Army Ranger night raid on an ISIS compound resulted in the deaths of 2 soldiers, most likely from friendly fire. IR strobes, visible flashlights, and rifle fire were misidentified by friendly troops, likely underskilled and undertrained in infrared signaling and identification.
Okay, so it sounds like there wasn't really a clear verdict as to what happened with that possible friendly fire incident. So I don't know, I think this video is getting a little bit off topic, to be fair. Again, we're trying to see how the US is losing the advantage. Now, there are some really good points here. With night vision and new technology, of course you need to train with it. Now, I would say even in the conventional infantry, we do a decent enough job with learning how to use it, but I have to say there is a big gap in, marking and just being able to identify yourself. Maybe if you're in a CQB environment, you can use your IR floodlight and signal that way. But as far as like IR signaling, as far as like helmet mounted strobes and whatnot, those aren't really that accessible in the conventional infantry. I'm sure when you're talking about SOF or maybe like Ranger Battalion and whatnot, they have plenty of stuff like that. So they train with it all the time because they have a lot of access to that sort of stuff. But in the conventional infantry, it's definitely harder to get that stuff, which is kind of a shame because it is really crucial to train like that so you don't have incidents like that or, potentially like that happening.
And at the same time, Ranger medics were effectively utilizing their own night vision systems to treat patients in total darkness. The difference in this case between these two events was simply training. Constant training is required to fully and effectively operate with this technology. And as the technology advances, constant retraining. While the U.S. continues to lead in terms of technological supremacy, it has begun to fall seriously behind in the development of signaling standards, IR light discipline, and simple friendly forces identification. Official U.S. military documentation makes little mention of night vision systems in general, and even fewer for the identification of friendly personnel. Improving that will be a major necessity to operate effectively in the future.
Yeah, so I know in deployed environments, you'll get something like a Firefly, or you'll have like IR patches. Now, it's pretty standard operating procedure to come up with a signaling plan for whatever operation you're doing. So I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I can say from my experience, even if we don't necessarily have the technology, like everyone having a strobe or the Firefly strobe, even if you don't have that, you do have ways of signaling. Of course, with night vision, there's like an IR floodlight that you can engage, so you can signal like that, and that's pretty much the most common. You can use a certain amount of like flashes to signal each other, just so you know it is the right person that you're talking to. So I would disagree with that. I do think there is a lot of training done to make sure that people are signaling properly and actually identifying people properly. Now, another important thing to do is going against people who actually have the same technology as you. So doing like a force on force thing is pretty helpful because it allows you to consider, if the enemy does have night vision, what do I need to do to lower my signature? I can't just have IR patches all over my kits because it'll be super easy for the enemy to see. And of course, if the enemy is using thermals, that makes it so much harder for you to plan for movements. I can say being on reconnaissance and trying to, go against people who have thermals, it's such a pain in the butt, but it's so crucial for you to learn those lessons in training so you know how to do it whenever you're going deployed or whatnot.
One technique used to distinguish between friend and foe is using IR strobes. These are little light beacons that flash that are worn by friendly units that can only be seen through either night vision or thermal devices, which help identify friendly forces. One problem, however, is that these strobes are not a standard equipment. They do not have a standardized pattern and are often bought aftermarket by soldiers that are not provided with them by their unit. Another problem is other countries like Russia, China, and now even Iran and others are quickly catching up in the IR spectrum. In the past, entire US Special Forces units could shine IR lasers and signaling devices with impunity, but those days are gone. These Russian, Chinese, Iranian, and even captured US night vision systems are being used against the US by non-state actors. The Taliban, for example, have been seen operating with US night vision devices. And these other countries have made some pretty serious leaps in thermal, IR, and fusion imaging systems, as well as guided munitions. So that IR strobe, again, that the US uses can be used against them, and pretty much make them a giant flashing target in the future.
Now, I will say that conventional infantry is a little bit slower to actually realize that, but again, we do the force on force stuff. I would say it might help if you, brief to the people who are about to do the training. The enemy does have access to this sort of technology just to get their gears spinning a little bit more. But again, we do force on force stuff. So if we're training to go against the stuff we have, I think generally you'll be okay because, unless it's peer-to-peer warfare, the enemy's not going to have stuff that's, going to be miles ahead of what we're using, which is, a privilege to say from the US perspective, at least.
That the US uses can be used against them and pretty much make them a giant flashing target in the future. While the threats faced are not quite at that level yet, it's slowly becoming a reality for the US. Owning the night is not easy. Continuing to stay on top requires constantly innovating, deploying,
some clear night vision right there.
The latest technology. It's true with night vision systems as well as any other technology, from tanks to aircraft to submarines. And there's still room for the technology to grow. One major upgrade has been combining both night vision with thermal. Night vision is always offering an incredible advantage, but if your enemy is using camouflage or there is minimal ambient light, you won't be able to see them. However, thermal, which picks up the differences in temperatures and requires no light whatsoever,
thermal is a game
to
changer.
Easily pick them out. Some of the latest technology, like the PSQ-20 or ENVG, does just this. U.S. Special Forces began using them back in 2008, and the whole U.S. military now has tens of thousands of them in operation. Taking it a step further is the latest ENVG-B. This has brought night vision and situational awareness practically to the same level seen in sci-fi.
Oh, those things are sick.
It can display information right into the device from any other linked tactical unit.
So those things look really, really cool. From my understanding, the night vision itself is like linked to the optic on the weapon. So you can basically see like a little heads up display from the optics point of view inside your night vision. From my understanding, that's how it works, which sounds like super cool, which is like really futuristic. So again, you can see the technology is advancing very, very quickly. But like you were saying, the whole thermal and night vision combination is a game changer. Again, thermal is awesome thing to have. I can say when I was in recon, I had night vision myself, but we only had a couple people with the thermal, and we were going against a force that had all thermal capabilities, which is very, very scary stuff. Of course, with a reconnaissance, like, yeah, you can blend in pretty well if they have night vision, but if they have thermal, yeah, unless you have something that can defeat thermal, it's not going to do you any good to hide and be camouflaged, if you know what I mean.
This means a drone flying overhead, or really any other force operating nearby, can send it a live feed that its operator can see. It can also send out what it's seen to any other
That's
unit,
cool.
while giving an unprecedented level of situational awareness. And this isn't just
Holy
some
cow.
far-off future technology. It is entering operational service right now. The challenge, as with any new technology,
That's scary.
is learning how to use it effectively, figuring out what information a soldier needs and what just clutters their view, distracting them from completing their mission. It is a real challenge, not only to properly train your forces in its use, but to integrate it into joint operations, and also have it all at a level that's affordable and sustainable. So there is still a rapidly advancing industry of new night vision technology, and the US is beginning to deploy it. But as other countries, such as China, continue to advance as well, going forward, it's becoming clear the US will no longer alone own the night.
Yeah, that makes
But real
sense.
quick, I'm going to mark myself on the map. Leave the city you live in that you're watching this from in the comments, and I'll start adding people to it. It'll be cool to see just how spread out viewers are, and to see how many people actually watch my videos to the end, and therefore even find out about this.
That's actually pretty cool if he follows up with that. But he is making some very, very valid points. Of course, the US can't really say we own the night anymore. It makes sense because people have access to cheap night vision, and I think we understand that. However, you will still have an advantage if you have some better technology. So for example, if you have the thermal night vision mixed together, that is a much bigger capability than someone who just has cheap like Gen 2 or Gen 3 night vision. That's definitely an advantage. So the US may still have an advantage over some people in those regards, but of course it's very true. You can't get cocky and say you own the night anymore. It's not realistic. But of course there are a lot of big countries out there that have systems that are very similar to what we have. So it's hard to say who has an advantage nowadays because technology is advancing so quickly. Nobody knows what each other has exactly. So again, it's kind of hard to say who has the advantage, but I think the US military is pretty comfortable with dishing out a lot of money to make sure that they advance their technology as quick as possible. But again, I guess it really all depends who has the biggest brain and who can develop this stuff fast enough. But yeah, I mean, technology now is getting very, very scary for sure. I mean, when you start linking in your night vision with your weapon and people can sort of see a live stream of that, that's pretty scary stuff. I mean, you see the stuff in movies and whatnot, but it's actually starting to become a reality. And I mean, yeah, it's pretty scary. But this is a cool video because it gets you it gets the gears spinning in those regards. It gets you to think about it, especially if you're like a leader, if you're in the infantry and you have people underneath you. You can start bringing this stuff up to them or, you know, start implementing it in training so you can start thinking about it and working around it. But again, it's hard to say who really has the advantage. But I mean, night vision, it's a cool thing to have. For me, I like using night vision because I like looking at the stars. You can see like crazy amount of stars. You can see shooting stars super easily when you have night vision. So honestly, that's like my favorite thing with night vision. But I will say using thermals against people who don't have thermals is definitely a game changer. But this is a really, really cool video. I know I'm being kind of silly with the night vision and whatnot. It is Earth Day, so it kind of gives me an excuse to use the night vision. But this is a cool video regardless. Again, let me know what you guys think about this video in the comments section. If you have maybe if you have like any cool memories with night vision, you can throw that down in the comments section. I know I'm doing this silly video right now, so that's one thing, but I can say I've done some pretty silly, irresponsible stuff with night vision back in my Lance Corporal days. But yeah, if you guys have any cool memories with night vision, feel free to throw that down below. Comment, let me know what you guys think regardless. I do love reading those comments. And I like to see what you guys have to recommend. Of course, if you guys want to support me on Patreon, you can go and check that out as well. You can also go in the Discord, talk to other members of the community, recommend some cool videos. I'm always popping in there. So yeah, I do appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, but that is it for this one. So I will see you all in the next one.